Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lavender Water Podcast. This is your host, Matthew Williams, and today I am being joined by a special guest. His name is Terry Tucker, and he's come here to talk to us today about his journey through dealing with cancer and resiliency. How you doing today?
I'm good, Matthew. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm a little tired. I work third shift, so this is like a continuation of my job.
I remember those days. I used to work third shift when I was a policeman in Cincinnati, so I feel your pain right now.
So it's funny you addressed that off the rip, because when we exchanged numbers, I noticed the 513, and I also gave you a 513 number. I was born and raised in Cincinnati.
What part, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was born at the Children's Hospital in Avondale. The family lived downtown. We moved to Avondale. I lived there for like 8 years. Lived in Clifton, St. Bernard, the West Side. Spent a lot of time in the East Side, downtown, uptown, all around. I'm just the mayor of Cincinnati.
That's great. I miss Cincinnati. It was a good city. There's a lot of good people there, and I was my partner and I ran the Evanston Walnut Hills area when I was a policeman.
Oh, that's where my grandpa's stomping grounds were.
Oh, really? Okay. Small world, isn't it?
Yeah, smaller town.
How do you like Atlanta?
Oh man, I really love it here. It's basically Cincinnati with I always describe it to my friends as it's like those sisters, and it's like Atlanta is Cincinnati's hotter older sister.
Yeah. I went to college in South Carolina and played basketball. Whenever we would go, play Georgia Tech or something like that, it was always we were going to Hot Atlanta. It was never Atlanta. So it was fun for us to get out and see the big city.
Nice. So, what kind of cancer were you dealing with? Or
I was
are you?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Because we didn't really, I never really do like a pre, thing. I always let it be natural. So all these questions come organically. So are you over the cancer? Are you still dealing with the cancer, or?
Still dealing with the cancer. Cancer started back in 2012, so it's been 10 years now, a little over 10 years now that I've been dealing with this. We were living in Texas at the time, and I was a girls basketball, high school basketball coach, and I had a callus break open on the bottom of my foot right below my third toe. And, initially I didn't think much of it because, as a coach, you're on your feet a lot. But after a few weeks of it not healing, I went and made an appointment and saw a podiatrist, a foot doctor, a friend of mine. And he took an x-ray and he said, "Terry, I think you have a little cyst in there and I can cut it out." And he did. And he showed it to me. It was just a little gelatin sac with some white fat in it, no dark spots, no blood, nothing that gave either one of us concern. But fortunately or unfortunately, he sent it off to pathology to have it looked at. And then 2 weeks later, I received a call from him. And as I mentioned, he was a friend of mine, and the more difficulty he was having explaining what was going on, the more frightened I was becoming, until finally he just laid it out for me. He said, "Terry, I've been a doctor for 25 years. I have never seen the form of cancer that you have. You have a rare form of melanoma that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And because your cancer is so rare, he recommended that I go to MD Anderson Cancer Center, which is probably one of the best, if not the best cancer center, certainly in the United States, if not the world, to be treated." And so that started my 10-year journey through cancer.
Well, I guess this is a good time, or it's okay. So basically, I lost a brother to cancer. He was 7 years old when he passed away. This was 2014. I believe he had started dealing with it in 2012. It was really bad. There was a Make-A-Wish trip to Disneyland or Disney World, the one in Orlando.
Okay.
And then, that was like the summer of 2014, and then by like the fall of 2014, he passed away.
Do you remember what type of cancer he had?
I don't remember the name, but I remember that it affected everywhere that there wasn't bone, I believe. So it was like everywhere. There was like a point where they said he was cancer free, and then it came back.
Yeah, that's the terrible thing about cancer, and it secretes a protein that hides itself from your immune system, and that's why it proliferates. It expands and goes everywhere, and because your body doesn't recognize it as something that is foreign and that shouldn't be there, so it doesn't attack it. As a matter of fact, right now I am on a clinical trial. I have tumors in my lungs now. I'm on a clinical trial that does nothing to the cancer, but what it does is it unmasks, it removes that protein so that my body can say, oh, hey, that's cancer. That doesn't belong here. We should go, my immune system should go attack it. And I'm having some success. It's keeping the cancer stable. I still have tumors in my lungs and that. But I mean, for right now, I'll take anything I can get.
Right. Man, this is a heavy conversation for the morning. I appreciate you coming through and sharing.
No, hey, I appreciate you doing this after working all night. So.
It's really no thing. You kind of get used to being a zombie after a while.
You're right. I'll kind of pick up from where I left off with being treated at MD Anderson and kind of give you the rest of the story. I had initially had a surgery to remove the tumor on the bottom of my foot, and then another surgery to remove all the lymph nodes in my left groin because they had done a biopsy, and there was one of the lymph nodes that had a microscopic amount of cancer. So they recommended that I have all the lymph nodes removed. So I did. And then when I healed, my oncologist, my cancer doctor, put me on a weekly injection of a drug called interferon to help keep the disease from coming back. It was not a cure. It was just really we're going to try to hold the disease off until more treatments are available. And the side effects of interferon for me were that it gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And like I said, that was not a cure. We're just trying to keep the disease from coming back. 2017, so 5 years after starting the interferon, I ended up in the intensive care unit because of the toxicity of the drug with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which usually is not compatible with being alive. Fortunately, I had gone to a level 1 trauma center, and they were able to stabilize me before sending me to the intensive care unit. So because of the toxicity, I had to stop the drug, and that almost immediately after stopping the interferon, the cancer came back in the exact same spot on my foot where it had presented 5 years earlier. That was 2017. 2018, I had my left foot amputated because of the disease. The cancer worked its way up my leg into my shin in 2019, requiring 2 more surgeries. And then in 2020, I had an undiagnosed tumor in my ankle area that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And my only recourse in the middle of the COVID pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And that's when I found out I had the tumors in my lungs. And initially I was in pretty bad shape. I was coughing up green phlegm. It was bloody. I was having a hard time breathing. And my oncologist suggested that I go on chemotherapy. And initially I did not want to do that. I was like, I was 8 years into this cancer battle. I was like, look, I've had a good fight. I'm not afraid to die. And he's like, no, really, I think you ought to try it because I think it can buy you some more time. And so I did, and that led to being on the clinical trial that I'm on now.
Well, that's good that you took that step.
Yeah, I mean, chemotherapy was pretty rough. I mean, it messed with my blood counts. It, made me very tired. I was told I would lose my hair. I did not. My oncologist said, some people lose their hair, some people don't. So I didn't lose my hair, but it was very hard on my body. It made me tired. It made me nauseous. I didn't have much of an appetite, things like that. So I did that, I don't know, for maybe a year or two. And then my oncologist said, hey, look, I've got this other drug combination that's a trial, but I think it might help you. Do you want to, you want to take a shot at it? And, I mean, that's chemotherapy is working to a point, and then you make the decision, well, I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to try this experimental drug that we don't know what's going to happen. And, that was not a decision that I made lightly because I wasn't sure I really wanted to, do I want to be the guinea pig, so to speak?
This kind of reminds me of, you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich?
Yes.
So the little segment where it's talking about the guy, his son is born without ears, and it's like off the rip, he's like, my son is going to hear. So it's like he really dedicated a lot of his time to, having his son close to him to feel the vibration of his voice so he would understand him. And then, feeding his subconscious mind, the blueprint. And then the child was successful, went through high school, no problem. And then in college, there was this trial of this experimental, like over the ear kind of like headset for hearing. And, I think like he went through like 2 or 3 of these kind of like trials before like the one actually came through that worked for him. And then it went and helped other people. But, at the time that he was born, no such technology existed, but he believed so much that it was possible that it was possible. And, I think in moments like this, faith and, just keeping up the good fight, it does a lot for the human spirit.
You're absolutely right. It really does. And I think so much of, what we deal with, it affects our physical body, but it's really our mind, or our mindset that is something we have to really concentrate on. I remember when I was growing up, I think it's safe to say that I'm probably significantly older than you are, but when I was growing up, there was a basketball coach at Indiana University by the name of Bobby Knight. And Knight had a saying that said, mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. And so here's this great coach teaching, premier athletes to use their bodies to be great basketball players. But what he was really saying with that quote is that your mind or your mindset is 4 times more important, than anything your physical body is ever going to do. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to, I think in a lot of cases, especially when your body is hurting, it's hard to keep that mental resiliency. It's hard to stay focused and stay positive because, pain kind of tends to rob you of your ability to be strong, to be resilient, to hang in there. And it's just something you got to work at. And it's not an easy thing. And a lot of people don't do it or can't do it. But it's something that I spend a lot of time focusing on, the mental aspects of cancer. I can't do anything about the physical aspects, where I have cancer, the drugs that I'm getting, how those drugs are affecting my body. are things that I really don't have any control over, but I have control over my mind. I used to tell my basketball players when I was coaching them that, the only two things that you have real control over in any circumstance in life are your attitude and your effort. And so I spent a lot of time trying to stay positive. And, I made a decision early on when I got cancer that I would not take this out on a doctor or a nurse or, somebody that was trying to help me, because it wasn't their fault I got cancer. But, there were days where you feel terrible. And, you don't want to be polite. You want to lash out. And so it takes a lot of mental fortitude, for lack of a better word, for, to kind of stay positive and be kind to the people that are trying to help you.
Are you familiar with the Serenity Prayer?
I am.
Then you definitely exemplify what's going on with that. Because it sounds like your battle is really difficult. It sounds like at every twist and turn there was something new affecting you, but here you are today, telling people, informing people, spreading awareness, and here, 10 years in.
I know it's definitely something. Melanoma, when I was diagnosed 10 years ago, was almost a death sentence. I mean, there really were not a lot of treatments to help people with melanoma, and people don't realize how serious the disease is. And I remember when I started on this clinical trial, I started on it with two other people. Now, we didn't know each other initially because of certain laws. They're not allowed to tell you who else is on the drug and stuff like that. But we figured it out. We were at the doctor's office at the same time. We were getting treatment at the same time. And so we kind of became friends. And last year, those friends both died. Their disease kind of came back, and they both passed away. So I'm sort of the last man standing, sort of the standard bearer of all this. And I remember a couple of months ago, my oncologist showed me my CAT scan photos from back in 2020 when I had these tumors in my lungs. And I don't have any medical background in any way, but I kind of know what looks like it should be there and shouldn't be there. And, I had these big tumors in my lungs, and I had these fluid all around the pleural spaces, the outside sort of my lung. And I remember looking at my oncologist, and I said, how was I alive? And he kind of smiled and shook his head, and he's like, I don't know. Which kind of says to me that I guess God's not done with me yet. It's not my time. So I'll just keep going, as long as I can.
Well, I truly appreciate your presence today, because this is a really powerful story.
Thank you.
So, what do you see? Where do you see the future with all this being said? Where do you see life going? How do you plan to just keep on living and making the most out of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess at this point in my life, I've really kind of, I guess let me back up a little bit. When I graduated from college, my father was dying of cancer. He had breast cancer, which back in the 1980s, for a man, they didn't really know how to treat breast cancer. And not to mention the fact that he had waited until he was in the final stage of the disease before going to see a doctor. So, they pretty much sent him home to die. But he lived another 3.5 years, and I believe he did because he had a purpose in life. He worked in real estate, and so he worked up to 2 weeks before he died. And I sort of filed that in the back of my head, figuring, well, someday it's going to be my turn in the barrel, so to speak, that I'm going to have to deal with sickness or disease or whatever it was. And so I remembered that, when I got sick, it's like, look, I could sit around and feel sorry for myself and lay in bed and think about what it's going to be like, when I die and things like that. Or I can take whatever time I have left and make something positive out of that. So I like to think I have done that. I've probably been a guest on more than 500 podcasts all over the world where I've talked about, this cancer journey that I've been on. I wrote a book in 2020 after I had my leg amputated, called Sustainable Excellence, the 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. I've just started a membership program around the book, and I'm thinking about writing another book. So I'm trying to put as much, I guess, goodness, positivity, inspiration, love, whatever you want to call it, back into the world with whatever time I have left. So I don't know how that's going to be. Like I said, I was in the same boat with two other people who passed away last year. I mean, that certainly could have been me just as well. But like I said, I guess God's not done with me yet. So I'll keep doing what I think he wants me to do.
Hey, that's a self-aware person right there. I like that, because it's been a strong belief in my mind that no matter how young or old, people don't leave Earth until their purpose is fulfilled in some way, shape, or form. It may not be their personal, goal for their purpose, but God's purpose for them. And, it's God's timing, and it's beyond us. And sometimes it's, but it's part of the plan. And we got to make the most of it while we're here. And that's why we're here today.
I couldn't agree with you more. But I've seen so many people that, the way I describe it is, a lot of people live a casual life. And as a result of that casual living, their goals, their dreams, their aspirations become a casualty of sort of that unplanned living. And I don't think a lot of people spend time thinking about, what's my purpose? Why did God put me on the face of this earth? And what am I supposed to do while I'm here? And, a lot of times people just kind of muddle through life. And then when it comes to the end of their life, those seem to be the people that want, hey, I want another month or another year or whatever. And by then it's too late. And, I always tell, especially young people when I speak, that if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, and it scares you, that you should go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things that you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them. So, do those scary things, do those, things that make you uncomfortable, that make you nervous, that are potentially embarrassing. And do something every day that makes you uncomfortable, because it's in doing those things, that those small things every day, that when the big things in life hit us, and, they hit us all. We lose somebody who's close to us. We get laid off from our job. We find out we have some kind of an illness or a chronic disease. And, we are like, hey, what do I do here now? And that. So I think it's important for all of us to find our purpose in life and to live it. And I guess I'll end with this, or make this the last point here. A lot of times we think our purpose in life has to be our job, what we do for a living. But it doesn't. I mean, our job, could be something that's over here that we do to pay the bills, but our purpose is to volunteer or to coach or to do a podcast or to write or whatever it is in your heart. So I always suggest to people that they kind of follow their heart. And if they do, I don't think you're really going to go wrong.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Those are good words, good, powerful words. Cause it's like, I'm 31. At the point of the release of this podcast, I would have turned 32. So I'm 32. But okay. It's like, in the 30s, a lot of my friends, have already been, here. And, at this point, a lot of my friends are married, having children. And now we're the adults, you know what I'm saying? We were the kids 10, 20 years ago, you know. Now we're the parents, we're the role models, we're the world right now. And a lot of my friends talk about their jobs, so really all they do. And it's like, you know, me personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with liking your job, enjoying what you do for a living. But like you said, there's a life beyond the workforce, you know what I'm saying? And I think it's because so much time is demanded at the workplace, it becomes people's identities. And it's like even with trying to build a brand and be an entrepreneur, it's like I understand because I'm living it how much time it takes up, but it's like at the same time there's a separate entity of Matthew Williams from his clothing brand, from his whatever other venture, you know. And I like to keep it that way. It's like I don't want you to think about clothes every single time you see me. It's like, hey, I like TV shows or whatever. I like video games. I don't want to talk about clothes right now. That's the job, you know. It's a fun job or whatever, but it's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's like there's a whole life outside of earning this money that's not worth anything in the wild, you know, where you can't go up to a rhinoceros like, don't kill me, I'll give you $100.
You could, but I don't think the rhinoceros will take it from you. That joke.
Right.
Sorry. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we spend a lot of time chasing things that, you know, I've always believed people were born to live an uncommon and extraordinary life. And that has nothing to do with, you know, how much money you make or what kind of car you drive or where you live. I mean, we're not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming. And I think that's an important distinction, because people think that, well, if I have a lot of money, or, you know, if I drive this kind of car, or if I live in this area, then I'm successful. I've arrived. I've made it. Whatever you want to say, and that's not necessarily the case. I'm 30 years older than you are, and I've seen a lot of people who spent their whole life focused on accumulating wealth or power or influence, and those people, in my mind, don't seem to be very happy with their lives. And to me, there's nothing wrong with working towards a goal. There's nothing wrong with working towards your purpose. And if you can find a purpose where you can get paid for it, oh my gosh, that's sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. That would be great. But not everybody can do that, and that's okay. But we all have a reason, a purpose that we were put on this earth to do. And I think it's important for all of us to look for that purpose, to keep an open heart to do that. And then once we find it, to use our unique gifts and talents and live that purpose. So I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, so many people get caught up in, well, this is success. And, you know, we set goals in our lives, but what many of us fail to do is we don't set values first. You know, what do we believe in? What is important to us? What's in our heart? What are we willing, you know, to give our lives for? And once we've determined those things, it's a whole lot easier to set goals. But if we're just setting goals in a vacuum where they're not being supported by what our values are, then those goals end up a lot of times being very empty.
So it's a really crazy phenomenon of synchronicity right here, where you said the foundation of it is setting your values and boundaries and standards. And the very first episode of Lavender Water Podcast was called Values, where we talked about the things we value and, you know, people's relationship with what they view as success. Because I remember in the 6th grade, I had this teacher, Miss McKay, and I don't remember much of the school year with her, but I remember this one conversation she had with us, and she was talking about basically how where people attain the level that they think is success, and then when they get it, it's like, now what? What's the next thing? You know, because It's like success is a repeated act. It's continuous. It's not like you've arrived. It's not like I'm here now, I'm chilling. It's like, no, actually, it's more work when you get to that level of quote unquote success, because you have to maintain it, keep it going, and it has to keep getting bigger, and you have to keep working more to, so it's like, if the BMW, the Mercedes Benz is the goal, then it's like you're going to be unhappy when you have it, because it's
You're
just
right.
the thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And people like, my book is titled Sustainable Excellence, and people always ask me, well, how do you define excellence? And my response is always, I can't. And they're like, wait a minute, you wrote a book called Sustainable Excellence. What do you mean you can't define it? And what I try to explain to them is, you and I, Matthew, may be looking at the same thing, and you may say, hey, that person or that thing is excellent. And I may say, yeah, they're good, but I don't think they're excellent. So, excellence, kind of like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, we all have to define excellence for ourselves. So I can't give you a blanket definition that says, well, this is excellence. And then, once you define what excellence is, once you achieve it, what do a lot of people do? They sort of sit back, put their feet up on the desks, pour themselves a drink, and they're like, hey, I've arrived. Look at me. And then what happens? 6 months or a year later, somebody passes them up. Because just as you said, and just as your teacher said to you, if you get excellence, in order to sustain it, you have to continue to innovate. You have to continue to change. You have to continue to look at new ways to operate your business and to grow it. And if you're just doing the same old thing, well, somebody's going to figure out how you did that, and they're going to figure out a better way to do it, and they're going to surpass you. So I think your teacher was absolutely right, and it sounds like you certainly learned a good lesson from that conversation with her, that, you can't just sit back once you think you've obtained what you want, because, you're going to be very disappointed, and then all of a sudden somebody's going to be better than you, and, you'll be kind of licking their dust, so to speak, as they pass you by.
Right. Yeah, basically the classic story of the tortoise and the hare, where the hare starts chilling in the middle of the race, like, oh, he's so slow, he could never catch up to me, takes a nap, loses the race, looking stupid.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great example of consistency. Just stay in the course. I'm just going to hit it every day. I'm going to get better every day. Jerry Rice was a San Francisco 49er football player, Hall of Famer. And he had a great saying one day. I heard him talk, and he said, I want to make sure I get this right. He said, today I will do what others won't, so that tomorrow I can do what others can't. And I think that's, that's exactly what you were saying. I mean, it's like, hey, I'm going to do this today because you're going to stay in, you're going to sleep in and have a good time. I'm going to be out here working. And then tomorrow, when you need to be able to do this, you're not going to be able to, but I am, because I was here putting in the time, putting in the work. So it's a good point.
It is. I'm actually seeing stuff like that in my reality, where it's like, so it's like, it's kind of typical that so many men want to be rappers. So like 10 years ago, I was really trying to be a rapper. A lot of my friends were trying to be rappers. But the thing about it was, like, I wasn't just rapping, but I was making the beats. I was recording myself. I was creating my own graphics and cover arts and stuff. And these are things that I saw that other artists couldn't do. Like, I just feel like I just need to be able to rap. Like, everyone else need to take care of it for me. And it was like, I don't know. So it's like 10 years later, where it's like now I'm applying all these things that I learned from trying to be a rapper to graphic design and business and stuff. And then it's like associating with people from back then, asking me how to do these things they should have learned those 10 years ago. It's like, oh man, we got NFTs and cryptocurrency out here. You're going to get eaten alive. Like, you got to learn this stuff. Like, like it's not an easy thing to learn. Like you had the time 10 years ago. Now we're 30. It's harder for us to learn things. We don't smoke and drink so much. Like it's getting different, And it's just some people will have the edge because they take the extra time. Like stories about Kobe Bryant where they'll be like, oh yeah, I got up at 9 a.m., went to the gym. Kobe was leaving the gym. He was already there. Well, yeah, he was getting up early and dedicating more time and then fitting in more time in the day to train to get that edge. And then he was learning his opponents and, he was really mental about his craft, you know what I'm saying? So the casual person in that environment can't last. It can't possibly last when that person is that overly dedicated.
You're right. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. I played basketball in college, and my daughter got my height. And I remember in the summers, I would work out with her when I was a basketball coach, and we would get up and we had a rec center that was close to our house, and so we would go to the rec center every morning. And, we'd be there at it wasn't even crazy early. We'd be there at 8 o'clock, say, we'd had breakfast and all that kind of stuff. And we'd work out for 2 or 3 hours, and we had the entire gym to ourselves. And there were so many times when I thought about what you just said, where it was like, where are all the other, players that are wanting to be good, want to be good next year? Where are they? Are they sleeping in? Are they playing video games? Are they doing that kind of stuff while we're here in the gym working? And a lot of times we leave at, 11:30, maybe, noon, and all of a sudden, well, here comes a few people. They're coming in to work out now, and it's like, oh, okay, well, hey, our day's done. We put in 3 or 4 hours in the gym. How many days are you going to do this? Where, and as a result, our daughter got a scholarship to play basketball in college. So, you put in the time, not always, but a lot of times you're going to get the positive results that you want.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I believe that as long as you work towards something, you'll build progress towards the goal. And if it's not the specific goal you want, you'll be redirected to something even better than you thought.
Yeah, that sounds like what your rapper story is. You didn't become a rapper, but you learned all these things that other people didn't learn, and now you're able to use that to help other people. That's, some people might look and say, hey, I failed. Well, did you fail or did you learn? If you learn things, then you didn't fail. Yeah,
because, man, I can't say that I failed, and I'm doing better things. I'm doing more constructive things now than I was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I think a lot of that comes with age and wisdom and maturity and that. You learn what's important. You learn where your interests lie, and, you play to your strengths. This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy doing, so I'm going to do that. And if you can find somebody that will pay you to do that, where you can make a living, that's even better. So yeah, it's a simple philosophy, but it's one that seems to sort of get away from people, and I don't quite understand why.
I think a lot of simple things kind of escape us, and when they put the rat race around us, it's like you feel like you only have the time to eat, work, sleep, and shower. Everything else, feelings, no. Wants, no. Desires, no. Goals, no. Work, sleep, eat, sleep, shower. Repeat. Yeah,
and think of how hollow that makes you as a person. We're not connecting. You're kind of in your own little bubble doing your own thing, but you're not having relationships. You're not having deep conversations with friends because sorry, I don't have time to talk to you right now. I got to do, I got to go to sleep, or I got to do this, or I got to do that. And, it's amazing how much more you can do if you decide what's really important in your life. And not, I mean, I'm not saying everybody can work for themselves. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but, you've got to decide, again, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. What are your values? What means something to you? And then focus your goals around those. And like I said, I think a lot of people just make goals, but they don't have any kind of a foundation to support them. And as a result, they're doing exactly what you said. They get up, they go to work, they come home, they eat, they shower, they sleep, and they do it again. It's kind of like a mouse on a wheel, just going around and around and around.
Exactly. And I'm gonna take it to Cincinnati real quick because you keep dropping these key phrases. What's important? What's important? What's important? So there's a high school in Cincinnati. It's called St. Xavier. Do you know of it?
I do.
So do you know Coach Steve Speck?
I do not.
Okay, well he's like a football coach there, and one of the big phrases and mottos for the teams that he trains is win, and it stands for what's important now. And it's I didn't play football, but I always saw that saying plastered on the classroom walls, and it was yeah, I really like that. What's important? That's how you win. And like you said, when you really double down, quadruple down on the things you're good at and focus on those, you might have something. And I feel that's what I'm really doing in life right now. Is okay, I'm doing what I have to do for money, and then allocating all of my free time to building this dream.
And that's important. It's important for all of us to have dreams, to have goals and things that we want to do. And again, I think it goes back. If you define your values, your goals, your dreams kind of fall into place because obviously if you didn't like chemistry but you had to work in chemistry, you probably wouldn't be very happy. But if you really liked chemistry and you had to work in chemistry, you'd probably find that enjoyable. So I think it's important that we determine, and I'm going to mess this up. There was an architect way back in the 1950s. His great name. His name was Buckminster Fuller, and he had a saying about people when they would ask him about what their lives should be. And I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but I think I'm going to get the gist of it. He said, what's out there that I either have an interest or some talent for that if I don't do it, won't get done. And that's what he would tell people. It's go find that. Go find that thing that's out there that interests you or that you have some talent in doing that if you didn't do it, wouldn't get done. And make that, your career and see how that goes for you. And I think it goes back to these are things that I enjoy. These are things that I am good at. These are my talents. These are my gifts. And I'm going to use those, to, one, make money for me and my family, but two, to make a difference in the world, to find my purpose and live that purpose. And I think if you do, and again, probably somebody coming to the end of his life, I think if you do find your purpose and live it, death is not nearly as scary as opposed to those people who never do anything with their lives. There was a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that I heard that goes like this. It says, when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for.
That's powerful. And I think on that note, that's a good time to end the episode.
Sounds like a plan.
I appreciate you coming through today, Terry.
Well, Matthew, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's always good to connect with another fellow Cincinnatian and, kind of a small world. And I was glad I was able to be on your podcast today.
Ooh, okay. Right before we end it, let me ask you, Gold Star or Skyline?
Skyline.
Okay, I'll rock with it. I like Skyline. So, for everyone out there, man, it's Gold Star. Hey, I mean, it's Cincinnati. It's a Cincinnati thing for those that don't know. You got to come to Cincinnati and try the chili. It's like 50,000 different chili spots in Cincinnati, but there's only one king.
That's right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Lavender Water Podcast. I have been Matthew Williams, your host, and this has been my guest, Terry Tucker.
Matthew, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, and I always say it's good people like you that allow me to come on and tell my story, and hopefully between our conversation, we're going to make a positive difference in somebody's life, and if we do, today's been a good day.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. You have a good day.
Thank you. You do the same. Get some sleep.
For sure. Peace.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Thanks.